Hey there everyone, and welcome to another Skill Rune Showcase. I'm going to be rushing through this one a bit because I want to get it all in one clip. I'm actually leaving later today, which I'll get to at the end of the video. The 3 runes for each class, a lot of them are exact copies of previous runes, just in Shadow Element now. So there's not a lot I need to go through. I'll just kind of show you some of the numbers and the interesting ones. So the 3 on Wizard are on Frost Armor, Drake, and Protection Bubble. It's one on Protection Bubble. I just want to talk first about the way it looks. It's pretty cool. Penumbra here, this is one of the advanced skills, puts like this dark bubble around you in a sort of effect like that. Well, that is on the with the Shadow Skill Rune on. This one also, look at it, it's like Fiery Aura except kind of a dark red black like thing. And then Spirit Armor as well. I love the look of this. It's pretty crazy. Makes you go kind of ghost-like with those spikes behind you. Anyways, so looking at Spirit Armor first. Spirit Armor is an almost exact copy of Nature's Blessing. Since the damage means nothing here, you don't bother looking at the element. All you're really using it for is that root effect. So anything that hits you with melee is rooted for 1.5 seconds. Rooting is where like they can't move at all. That is pretty useful in PvE, trying to avoid the melee enemies. If they happen to clip you as you're trying to run away or whatever, then they will stay rooted and they won't be able to follow you for a bit. So it's kind of helpful there. But ultimately, I'd say we've got enough tools now that we don't have to rely on that. I used that a lot originally with Frost Armor, the slow effect it puts on enemies, but it's just not really that necessary anymore. That's more of a PvP thing, where you can keep enemies away from you by letting them hit you, and you just keep moving away a little bit, carry on attacking a little bit, carry on attacking. Can really screw over knights. So the root effect is good, and then otherwise the heal is not so useful. So the heal only happens every 5 seconds. It happens 5 times over the course of the duration, but because it's only every 5 seconds, it won't help you that much. It's just kind of a little topping up. Now that's the actual difference between Nature's Blessing and Spirit Armor, is that it goes from 11% to 13%, which isn't a whole lot of difference. So if you have Nature's Blessing, I would not recommend you level up this rune at all. However, if you haven't got Nature's Blessing, then Spirit Armor could be a good choice. I'm personally using it because Fiery Aura and this new one on Protection Bubble, they reflect damage that you deal. They reflect damage back if you hurt the wizard that's using it, and so Flame Armor hits them lots and kind of gets you killed. So for PvP, I would prefer to use Spirit Armor. So I've actually, in fact, leveled it up. However, it's not got a whole lot of use outside of PvP. So I'm going to show that one in a little bit. Now, the next one I'm going to talk about is Curse Protection. This is an exact copy of Fiery Aura, except in Shadow rather than Fire. There's, that 12.5% goes to 13%. Meh, no real difference. It's just the fact that it's Shadow. So if you happen to have higher Shadow than Fire, then this is good. However, in general, these runes are not useful outside of PvP. They're just PvP runes. If you've got one, then don't really bother doing the other. They're so strong anyway, even when Fire's like halved. It's so powerful. So, yeah, just get one of these two, I'd say. And it's just kind of an option there for if Fire's halved, then you can use the Shadow one or whatever, if you'd like. And then the last one to talk about is Ghost Drake. So this is quite an interesting one because it's a copy of Empowered Frost Drake, but with a little bit more damage. The main use for this here is the slow effect, which is the only bonus over Nature Drake. So if I've mentioned at various points, Nature Drake doesn't work like the other ones. That extra damage over time is actually like 100%. It's actually like 100% pet damage. So it does that 5 times on top of the initial 500%. So it actually adds 1000% nature on top. So when you look at the Ghost Drake, which you'd use against, say, light enemies where it's doubled, that would be dealing a little over 1000% damage, which is almost exactly the same as Nature Drake, just it's not damage over time. So Nature Drake is the best in almost all scenarios. The only reason why you'd want to use a different one is because of that slow effect. So Ghost Drake stands out for that. Against light enemies in PvE, it has the same damage output as Nature Drake, but it has the slow effect. So it's a very minor use, and I would not recommend it that much. I would say probably get Nature Drake and then just stick with that for everything. But if you have all the other skill runes and stuff and you're just looking for those extra use things, Ghost Drake's pretty cool. It's better than Empowered Frost Drake, kind of. So yeah, that's that one there. So I'm just going to show them now. There's not really a lot to show, it's all in the numbers really, they're just repeats of other ones. So you can see here, enemies that hit me, they take damage over time. That's from the Curse Protection. It's not a whole lot of damage in PvE. You can see that their health isn't going down by much. Spirit Armor, I can't really show, it doesn't really show the damage being reflected, and for whatever reason I can't get these enemies to be rooted. They may be root immune or something, I don't know. But anyway, so that's those two, and then the Ghost Drake, I'll just show this here. So when it lands, it does a little area of effect hit, which actually slows the enemies as well, which is quite nice. And then, yeah, attacks in. You'll see it's doing like just over 1 million with the Shadow, or about 1 million. And if I switch over to Nature Drake, it'll be hard to see because it's damage over time. I'll just place it right on top, so hopefully it'll get one hit and then die. And you'll see that damage over time? It's like hitting quite a lot. It's about 125,000, which with the 5 hits, or 4 hits? I'm not sure. Anyway, basically it adds up to be the same amount. Yeah, sorry, it's about 100,000 it should be doing each tick. I tested before this video. So it does almost exactly the same as Ghost Drake, the damage overall, so it's just for that slow effect. Anyway, I hope that's clear on everything, and it was more of a sort of talking rather than a showing, but that's just the case with those runes because they're slightly interesting and I wanted to really get my points across rather than just kind of show them off because they look cool. So anyway, let's move on to the Archer now. Sorry if you struggled to follow on the Wizard there, I was talking a bit fast. I'm going to talk a bit slower from now on. So on Archer we have three runes again. However, these are less interesting runes. They're literally all repeats of previous ones, which I suppose you can say on the Wizard, but there's some more sort of interesting stuff going on here. Here, the runes aren't that interesting. So, they're for Decoy, Pierce, and Mark of Death. So the Decoy one, like with Nature's Blessing and Spirit Armor, this one doesn't really do much different at all because there's kind of no damage output. So it's a copy of Water Illusion, which means when the decoy dies, it heals any nearby allies by a fairly reasonable amount, but not loads, and slows all enemies that are nearby. So the hitbox and the healing are exactly the same for those. The only difference is it actually deals some damage now. However, that damage is so small, it does crit and everything, but it's 15,000, and just one hit of 15,000 isn't that much. So it's better than Water Illusion, but it's practically the same. So if you've got Water Illusion, there's simply no point leveling this up. But if you haven't got Water Illusion, then it's kind of a better version of it. So I'll show that in a second. The next one is Piercing Darkness. This is exactly the same as Piercing Light and Piercing Ice. This actually does quite a bit of damage, and because it's on your basic attack, this is a really nice way of making like a shadow build much stronger. And for just generally going against light enemies, this is a really great one. It adds a load of damage on to your basic attack. It does 4 hits of that amount, which that amount is roughly 25%. It's 20 to 25% depending on your actual damage. And so that hitting it 4 times is roughly 80 to 100% shadow every 5 hits you do, which is quite reasonable when you think about it. And that will hit on, any enemies that you hit with your piercing arrows. So yeah, it's good. It's really great for doing that damage output. The only reason why I'm negative about it is because a shadow build on Archer isn't actually so great right now. So it's just, it's one of those ones that you do if you don't have high elements, then you can put it in there and yeah, kill light enemies really quickly or whatever. So Mark of Fear is an exact copy of Mark of Ice, just with a little bit more damage tagged onto it. So this hits the one enemy. The main reason to use this is for the slowing on it. So it slows the enemy which you mark. I think this was originally made in order to be a PvP version of it. So you'd hit it on like a knight or something to keep them away from you so then you can attack them more easily. However, people aren't so keen on it, especially because Mark of Ignition puts so much damage output onto your attacks that you just choose Mark of Ignition with everything. So Mark of Fear doesn't have a whole lot of use, and again, I suppose using it instead of Mark of Ice, you'd use it for the element, but there's not a whole lot going for it. So I'm slightly negative about these runes in general, because I was hoping that as they were adding more shadow runes to this class, it would make the shadow build better, make it more viable, but actually looking overall, I'm not going to go through it now, but looking overall, it doesn't quite make it viable. There's just not enough there. So you can't really go for a shadow build, and so you'd only use these runes for taking down certain shadow elements. So yeah, I'll show the Piercing Darkness here. It just, adds some dark damage onto your basic attacks. Then, what else? Oh, Shadow Illusion. So we'll just show this. Nice little dark course. That's a kind of gas, dark, a dark cloud coming out of it. You can see there they hit at the end. I think it does about 50,000 right now, because my basic attack's doing about 50,000, roughly. I love the piercing darkness stuff, like, you get so many numbers there. And then lastly, I'll do Mark of Fear. So if I do it on one of the smaller enemies, you'll see how it's struggling to run along those. Did it slow all the enemies around? I don't think it does. But yeah, it's just on the one you mark, so that one gets slowed. Anyway, not really going to show anything more here. I'm just going to move on to the Night skill runes. So for the Night skill runes, this is where it gets a little bit exciting. I'm slightly negative about the Wizard and Archer, just because I don't think there's much that's appealing there. However, I mean, the Wizard's Fiery Aura version in Shadow is quite good, just for the people who aren't fire wizards. But anyway, these ones are exciting because Knights got exactly what they needed. They have very little shadow damage output. It's always been a problem. You've got Shadow Wield here, which is always good. Shadow Blade was great in the past, but it's massively outclassed by Flowing Blades and other recent MAME skill runes. And then otherwise, on other damage skills, they just don't really have shadow on them. Shadow Wield here is kind of outclassed by the current ones. It doesn't do much damage. So yeah, they were really lacking shadow damage output, and then now they've got Dual Scythe. So Dual Scythe, I know a lot of Knights would hate this when they look at it because it's got the 2 swings, and Wild Swing, which did the 2 swings before, was bugged. However, that got fixed. The way they fixed it is they removed the knockback from the first hit, so no longer are enemies getting hit back by the first hit, so they don't get hit by the second hit. It's working perfectly fine, and this does the most damage out of any Cleave skill rune right now, because I think the next most powerful is Empowered Water Cleave, or no, it would be yeah, it's Empowered Water Cleave, I think. So Empowered Water Cleave, that's 176% plus 16,000. This one is 194% plus 22,000. It's like stand out by a fair amount, and yeah. So it does a load of damage. It's the first Shadow skill rune on Cleave, which is great because that was kind of needed to create a Shadow build. And yeah, so this is the one to rave about. This is the one that's really looks really good. The other two are kind of pointless. So Death's Blessing, this is a repeat of Water's Protection, and I'll show you, but basically this just never happens. You do loads of basic attacks, and it's meant to activate, heal you and do damage. Looks absolutely great by numbers, but it just, the proc rate is so low that it never happens. So it's almost a completely pointless rune. Then you've got Shield of Teeth, which is an exact copy of Shield of Thorns. Means that enemies take some damage when they hit you, and then there's the blast at the end, which does some extra damage, shadow damage. However, this just generally, the damage output is terrible. They don't crit properly, I don't think. It doesn't crit in PvP and stuff. Like, it's just pointless. The good runes on this skill are Shield of Light and Shield of Frost for that 40% damage reduction for 5 seconds at the end. That's amazing, and it's what makes the skill. Shield of Thorns and Shield of Teeth are completely pointless. So I'm going to show you, I'll show you the pointless ones first, I guess. So I'll do Shield of Teeth here. They'll sort of attack me and stuff. When it goes off, when it blasts, you'll see not much damage. That was the damage output from it, and it's meant to be a damage skill rune. Now I'm going to show you Water's Protection. Sorry, what is it called? I don't even know. Water Protection is the water version. I'm attacking. Let's go for the full 10 seconds. I bet it won't happen for the full 10 seconds. Nope, didn't happen. So that happens at some point. You know, if you're lucky, very lucky, then you will get a little heal and some damage. But yeah, that's kind of a pointless skill rune again. And then we get to Dual Scythe. So now you'll suddenly see, bang, look at that, huge damage. But I have got the skill level 99, so it's doing a load of base damage right now. But point is, it does a load of shadow damage on top. That's a huge amount of shadow damage, and you can spam it every 2 seconds. My one is 4 seconds because I got it max level, but yeah, it's going to do huge damage output to light enemies. And if you notice on the first hit, just watch this enemy here. The first hit doesn't knock them back, it's the second hit. And in fact, the animation time is exactly the same as the other cleaves. So the fact it does 2 swings is just irrelevant. Ignore that completely and just add it up into 1 swing. So that's it for these all these skill runes. I hope you enjoyed the video. Unfortunately, I'm going away. Well, I say unfortunately, I'm going away for a week to have some fun, and I won't be making videos as I planned. So everything will be delayed by a week, but it's coming. So thanks very much for watching.